Hi. Okay. The figures we're about to turn to now are, well, they're quite a bit different than what we've studied so far. We're turning to one Mr. Soren Kierkegaard, and I've asked you to purchase the Essential Kierkegaard for one small section, Sickness Unto Death. And then we are turning to a figure by the name of Friedrich Nietzsche. All right. Now, what these two figures are reacting to is just widely conceived a movement called sort of the modernist enlightenment, in which we're asked to use our own powers of reason to approach the world rather than taking a leap of faith, using the powers of bare belief. Right? Now, what both of these figures want to approach is, well, you might be surprised to hear this, but what they consider to be a spiritual crisis that the modern world is facing today. Right? It's a spiritual crisis. Now, the first time I read these figures, I was rather shocked to find out that we are in a spiritual crisis. Right? What I understand from my education, right, at least my early education, is that science keeps on chugging along. We discover more, we understand more, our technology is able to do more, right, in sort of this necessary process that just expands our knowledge base. Right? So human beings are in a situation where every day we're discovering more. Right? We understand more about the natural world. Right? Now, this is the promise of science. Right? This is the promise of the Enlightenment, where we use our powers of reason to interrogate the natural world, rather than turning to forms of spirituality like we would find in religion, like we would find in the more general sort of spiritual sort of California model of things, right, where it's all crystal power and we're all eating macrobiotic food and that sort of thing, right? Now, the reaction that Kierkegaard and Nietzsche are going to give us is one that, well, one that calls into question this necessary process towards more and more knowledge that eventually we all assume, and as we see in our science fiction, that we'll just come to an understanding of everything, right? We will become these almost godlike creatures who know everything about the natural world. We're going to lick this branch of science, that branch of science, and then once we've done that, we'll know everything. Well, both of these figures want to point out to us that just in this process of the Enlightenment that rationally interrogates the basis of our system of knowledge and tries to expel anything that's a leap of faith, anything that reason cannot grasp, well, what that's done is, well, it's put us in a rather awkward situation, right? One in which the very basis for living a human life, right, is thrown out, right, along with dogma and superstition and what have you. Now, it's not my position, and it's not theirs, to be wholly critical of this enlightenment, right? There is a certain extent to which, yes, we should rationally interrogate the natural world and come to a more firm understanding of what's going on around us, right? But what they want to claim is a certain extremity, right, of this Enlightenment promise, one in which only that which is rational, only that which our reason can grasp should be accepted, right? They want to claim that that position, right, is far too extreme, right? Now, both of these figures, and if you've started your reading, you've probably become frustrated with the reading. Both Nietzsche and Kierkegaard are notoriously hard to read, and that's for a very specific reason, right? Which, in different points, both of them try to expand upon, right? They actually make these arguments, right? And what they're reacting to in their time is something that's come to a certain kind of extreme position in our time, and it is the tendency, right, to make things easier to understand, right? The tendency to present simple explanations, right, so that all of us, right, regardless of how hard we think about it, right, wind up coming to an understanding of the world, right? Well, I want to say this sort of idiot's guide method of coming to an understanding of our position as humans, it's on the one hand good, just because it presents us with a number of ideas that tend to open our mind. And actually, I use this as sort of an extreme example here. In fact, a lot of examples from my class come straight from this Idiot's Guide to Understanding Ethics, because they are illustrative, right, examples. Right? But if the only thing that we read, the only thing that we interpret, the only thing that we place the basis for our understanding of the natural world upon are simple explanations, right? Well, these simple explanations tend to, well, give us a basis to misunderstand, right, our basic situations. So Kierkegaard, at one point in one of his letters, right, what he starts out by claiming is that he sees all around these attempts to make things lighter, to make things simpler, to explain religion and faith and science and politics simple. Right? Now, he in his life, right, did not have a skill for making things simple. Right? Nor does he believe that's the way that we should understand the world around us, because some problems actually, in the final analysis, are incredibly complicated. Right? And when we accept simple explanations of who we are, how we live our lives, how we should relate to one another, right, what we do is, well, we constrain ourselves to that simple understanding. Nietzsche likewise claims that, well, there's this democratic enlightenment kind of tendency to pretty well kill the urge to interpret, right? What we should understand from a publication like this, or a publication like the newspaper, or Wikipedia, or SparkNotes, what these publications encourage us to do is simply accept, with a bare minimum of interpretation, with a bare minimum of critical thought, that which is in the bold-faced headlines, or fact. Right? Well, what both of these figures want to point out to us is that the best of our natural science, the best of our understandings of the natural world, right, have barely scratched the surface of truth. Right? Have barely scratched the surface in terms of coming to an understanding of the natural world around us and our position in it, right? And both of these figures, Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, are going to respond to a certain lack of understanding that's produced scientifically and rationally for us, right? So, when we turn to Kierkegaard and his sickness unto death, what you're going to find is that I'm going to spend most of today's video lecture addressing about 5 or 6 sentences worth of text, right? And these 5 or 6 sentences worth of text are supposed to present us with a puzzle that we have to think deeply about, right? Critically interrogate, right? Spend a good deal of time and effort interpreting. And what Kierkegaard and Nietzsche want to claim is that, at least partially, this is going to, in us, develop a certain amount of skill in interpretation, which is necessary to live an authentic, genuine human life, right? And what's more, right, thinking deeply about these problems presents us with a wildly different account of what we are and what our place in the natural world in fact, represents.